someone had to build for hemp or cannabis, otherwise India would miss another gravy train. And we couldn't afford that with something that is older than democracy as a concept, that is older than many religions as a concept.
ये लेकिन थोड़ा सा एक paradox नहीं है? It's an Indian product and now the West is the one who's kind of capitalizing it and turning it into a $1 trillion economy right now.
Exactly. India नहीं कर रहा है और ये हमारा पौधा है. Then the reality strikes everyone saying, China कर रहे तो हम क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं? So one of the first companies to legally cultivate cannabis in India. Third is what you mentioned earlier, the perception their families would have of them even entering this business. Very lucky that some of our first believers are industry titans. So our first investor is Mr. Ratan Tata.
As an entrepreneur, what would you tell anybody who's planning to start in this hemp ecosystem? What will be your word of advice for them?
First word of advice, temper your expectations.
आज हम गांजे के बारे में बात करेंगे. नो, सीरियसली गांजे के बारे में बात करेंगे. बेसिकली आज के जो गेस्ट हैं, they are India's first industrial and medical hemp company. They work very closely with the government to reform the agricultural norms as well as figure out the different kind of products that could be made from hemp and cannabis. तो आप लोग जिस चीज़ का इस्तेमाल कॉलेज में करते हैं, उस चीज़ के और भी बहुत सारे अलग अलग यूज केसेस हैं, जिसके बारे में जहान पेस्तन जमास, हु इज द चीफ स्ट्रैटेजी ऑफिसर ऑफ बॉम्बे हेम्प कंपनी BoHeCo, वो आज हमारे साथ बात करेंगे about the whole hemp ecosystem in India and what kind of use cases are there for anyone who's trying to start something in the hemp ecosystem and how to navigate the whole regulatory issues around building in this ecosystem. Please enjoy.
यार जान, सबसे पहले तो मुझे ये बताओ कि ये आइडिया कहाँ से आया आपको? Where did you stumble upon this? Because I think you people started back in 2013.
Correct. In fact, it was earlier, before that. Essentially, all 7 of us co-founders were in the same college together, in HR College of Commerce and Economics. And under the guidance of our principal that time, Dr. Indu Shani, she was also the sheriff of Mumbai. We were always encouraged to be outwardly, not just be in the class, try and involve yourself in the community, in the ecosystem. So, wo samay pe, we had this group, I would say, called SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise. Aajkal we call it Enactus. It's in many colleges. You encourage social enterprise. You encourage people to think innovatively and how Tier 1 can contribute to Tier 2 and Tier 3 India as well. So, wo samay pe we had a project called Project Chirag, which was majorly focused around rural electrification. We used to go to, like, I would say the most rural hamlets. You would go like 12, 18 kilometer treks in rural Udaipur, rural Maharashtra, like Wada, Punjab, Uttarakhand, a whole host of states. And every time we visited, we would keep coming back with the same thing, that everywhere we went, what we call cannabis or bhang, colloquially speaking, is growing in every district.
Yeah.
But which is ironic, because when you speak of India, you speak of its heterogeneity, that every 100 kilometers you travel, custom, culture, food, dialect, everything changes. But seeing bhang is the common theme that existed everywhere really got us scratching our head saying, okay, hold on. It's either just this wild bhang is either just being seized and burned by the cops and narcotics, or is being sold on the black market by villagers, or the most is being used to make rassi to tie your cattle, or make chutney just to keep yourself warm during the winters. But that wasn't enough. So it was around the same time, incidentally, during our college days, I think we had gone maybe about 50 to 100 villages in across India, had summer holidays. And one thing about me is my family, I'm of Australian descent. So my family, my mamas and all live in West Australia and Perth. So I traveled to Perth on a summer holiday, and we'd just gone a small tour of the rural parts of West Australia. And what people don't really mention is there's a lot of alcohol issues, income issues, developmental drug issues. But there was one town called Margaret River, which stood out. It was 10,000, maybe 15,000 people at the most. Very small town, but they were thriving. And every other town around them was almost defunct or broke. So I was curious. I went to a couple of locals. I said, guys, what are you doing differently? They said, we do 2 things. We grow grapes for wine, and today Margaret River wine is available everywhere in the world, even in Mumbai. And we grow hemp or cannabis for everything else. We use the fiber to make our surfboards. We use the seeds for our salads to keep us healthy. We use the flower or the bud for medicines, for our pain and our stress and sleep. And that was the eureka moment, saying, look, this is Australia where cannabis is not even indigenous. It was never historically grown in this country, but they are making a rural economy of it. India, this plant historically belonged to, as we learned later on down the line, that almost 60% of all districts in India just see the wild growth of bhang, cannabis. And our history, the first ever cannabis plant that grew in history was in our upper and middle Himalayas. But ironically, we're the ones who are shunning it because it's taboo and ye ganja hai, charas hai, when we should be the ones embracing it. This could be the agriculture 2.0 that you're looking for. And that really led us to, and essentially when we were in SAIF and we were in college, it wasn't just the 7 of us founders. So when we used to brainstorm, it'd be about 15, 18, like really eager, enthusiastic kids to contribute. And we first asked ourselves, can we, as a college project ke hisab se kar sakte hain? And we're like, this is too big. You need to professionalize this. You need to take this into a structure or a setting. And that's essentially where I posed the question to a lot of folks, who's with me? And incidentally, it was the 7 of us who said, okay, you know what? There is something in this. There's some potential, and if someone has to do this, let us try first. क्योंकि कोई और करेगा तो we don't know whether they'll do it the right way, they'll follow the right channels, make it more legitimate, and it may just die before it sort of becomes something really special. So, unlike the conventional sort of Bollywood movie or sort of the OTT show where you right out of college, you jump straight into it, we said, let's be a little sort of wiser about this. For a couple of years, right out of college, we all went our separate ways, and we deliberately built our chops in areas that we knew would contribute if we were to do something like BoHeCo. So, for example, I set up another startup in tourism, and I was working with a family company. Somebody else worked in marketing, somebody else worked in risk analysis, someone else in operations and packaging, someone did the legal and the legal degree and got the legal degree and became a lawyer. That really helped us shape up 2 years later that, okay, we decided just after college that after 2 years, we will sit down, have a cup of coffee, and we'll see where we stand. When we sat down and for that coffee, we knew we had to do this. It was inevitable. Someone had to build for hemp or cannabis. Otherwise, India would miss another gravy train. And we couldn't afford that with something that is older than democracy as a concept, that is older than many religions as a concept, and that has contributed to our economy, whether through Ayurveda, whether through historical uses. In fact, to give you an example, the Ellora caves. The only reason the Ellora caves survived as compared to Ajanta caves was because they used the fiber of hemp in the tuna or the lime that they put inside. And that's why it survived 1,500, 2,000 years. That gave us that confidence that we're entering in the right avenue. Now it's about building for the future of hemp or cannabis, and it's no better than 7 guys to come together and say, this is how we're going to build the ecosystem. Because when you're talking about something like hemp or cannabis, naturally, it comes with stigma. It comes with preconceived notions that you have to dispel. And it's not an easy task. Because then from after dispelling is when you start building for the category and the consumer and the users as well. So that was essentially where the first question we even asked ourselves when we set up BoHeCo is it even legal to be in this business?
Yeah.
So I guess, one of the first things we did even as a company was study the NDPS Act. When you say cannabis in India, you think Narcotics Act, NDPS Act. There's been enough news through the COVID times and more for everyone to be familiar with what this act means and it entails. It's rigid. It's a rigid act, and rightly so. But as we dove a bit deeper, we realized, okay, hold on. There is room to maneuver, and there are legal avenues and ways by which industry can grow. But it can only happen once we have dialogue and engage in dialogue with the government and come on the same page. That this is the pathway that is legal, and this is the pathway which is completely shunned because it's illegal. And creating that bifurcation essentially as we grew over time was one of the key areas that we drove. Majorly our focus being around regulation and policy and navigating those waters, those choppy waters. Then around research, and then around category building at large. So that's how I would say the last decade is, sometimes there's a saying that it takes a decade to get to day zero. Yeah. And when something like hemp or cannabis, that's essentially where we are. Now it's about building for a new era of it as well.
Yeah. No, yeah, this is a very interesting story. So all these 7 co-founders are basically friends who started to research on a project.
That's correct.
Then you people basically incorporated a company.
Exactly, and said, okay, hold on. what is China doing with this? What is Europe doing with this? We saw Canada, where ironically cannabis never grew. Even Thailand is building a multi-billion dollar industry.
Yeah.
See, why can't India emulate our peers? I'll give you an example. In China has you wouldn't believe it, but ironically, China is one of the largest hemp producers and suppliers to the global economy, even though cannabis is fully taboo there. And that is the strategic vision they had, that each province grows hemp for a different reason. One province grows it only for fiber for textiles.
Wow.
One province grows it only for food, seed for food grade and cosmetic products. One grows it for CBD, which is a cannabinoid that comes out of the leaf and the flower that's very good for anti-inflammatory, skin, stress, sleep, a whole host of areas. They control 60-70% of markets with this commodity. And that vision, in fact, one of the interesting things we learned is the PLA, the Chinese army, wears their uniform made out of hemp, out of fabric. Because when they're fighting on the border with Myanmar, it gets really hot and humid. So cotton weighs you down, natural fibers weigh you down. You need something that gives you that mobility extra. Just the mind-blowing lessons of what the world is doing with the crop that हमारे backyard में उग रहा था. So that was the stunning reality we need to realize. We have to work with the government and put together. And touch wood, right from when we started across this decade, from central government to state, there has been a tremendous support. I mean, it has been overwhelming. Naturally, India is a very complicated ecosystem. Bureaucracy, political machinery, state to state, center versus state. Being able to clarify this and create pathways by which, for example, we realize that there are essentially two white elephants. Okay. One was that when you define cannabis as a narcotic in India, you only refer to two parts of the plant. You refer to ganja, that is the flower, and you refer to charas, that is the resin from the flower. You would have seen a lot of it in cultural reference and mythological reference also, with many, many different gods, many different sort of religious characters. What is legal and what you can legally use is the fiber or the stalk. You can use it for textiles, nanomaterials, composites, automobiles, where there is a huge demand for natural fibers and these type of sustainable materials globally as well as in India. You can also use the seed as a food product, like how you have alsi ka beej, flax seeds, chia seeds, which ironically don't belong to India, now a fast growing market. But hemp seeds match them in omegas, your amino acids, your digestible protein, which is a no-brainer for a naturally predominantly vegetarian country that occasionally eats non-vegetarian or meat. And the third element is what we call bhang. That is the leaf of the plant. What also for religious and cultural reasons during Mahashivratri or Holi people consume for the high that you get out of it. But incidentally, the extract from this bhang has been recorded in Ayurveda for centuries, saying that it helps in areas like pain, diarrhea, indigestion, coughs, colds, a whole host of even common indications of illness areas. And legally in India, under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act, you can use the leaf bhang or its extract to make Ayurvedic medicines for both topical and consumable products that can be prescribed by doctors and used by patients, where what would have been the rang barse when the narrative set in your head when I talk of bhang is eventually आपकी दादी वो तेल apply करके उसके arthritis से recover हो रही है. So being able to create that bridge of awareness that you eventually cross, and doing that with the regulator and the policy maker was where we first started. Saying these three parts of the plant are out of NDPS. The policy maker themselves said very clearly, the industry has to give us direction and we work with industry to empower the direction for the larger benefit of people. The second element is कि समझो you want to use a part of the plant. ये agriculture crop तो है, उगाना तो पड़ेगा legally, लेकिन ये cannabis है. How will you grow this legally? That is where, while working with the regulator, we realized the NDPS policy makers, all your agencies, your CBN, your NCB, all the relevant agencies, that there are sections in this NDPS Act that legally allow state governments to create policies by which farmers can cultivate this. It started with the state of Uttarakhand because incidentally Uttarakhand is one of the historic states where hemp or low THC cannabis has grown, just wild, and there's been a lot of cultural familiarity with it. For example, स्वेटर बनाते हैं फ्रॉम द फाइबर और चटनी बनाते हैं, वो कुमाऊनी चटनी होती है जिसमें भांग की बीज होती है. सो दैट एसोसिएशन वाज देयर. So that is when back in 2015-16 we started engaging with the entire bureaucracy as well as eventually, after a course of time, it took us a lot of meetings, a lot of hard work. We got to the chief minister of that administration. We got to him in a late night meeting, I think 1:30 in the morning. He has a proper darbar. We were very lucky. One kind senior officer, invited us to the darbar and gave us a platform. And we did something very smart. We said, look, we don't know what is our product, let alone product market fit. We are trying to build the ecosystem and the industry while building this company. Okay? So we started creating products using the fiber or the seed, or started working with our international partners to source these products. So for example, we had shoes developed, jutis made out of the hemp fiber. We had bundis made out of it, or kurtas made out of it, exactly to the size of like a chief minister. Oh, wow. So then he's wearing it, he's applying it, it becomes part of his life and lifestyle. And that's the same pattern we've continued. We started with one state. And they always say it starts with a trickle and it ends with a flood. Today, there are almost 9 to 10 state governments in the same policy mode. Uttarakhand is the first state and the only state so far to legally allow the cultivation of hemp or cannabis. A lot of it kicked off after our meetings, engagements and dialogue with them, 2016. But it's been building and now even the medical cultivation of the plant. That's both for bhang as well as for using ganja in pharmaceutical APIs and phytopharmaceutical drugs and all, where it is legally allowed as a narcotic drug, like how you have morphine or codeine or other sort of NDPS items as well. So now that is how states have evolved. It started with one state saying, I will only allow to grow for seed and fiber. Today states are saying, I also want it to be grown and allowed for cultivation for all parts of the plant. Today Himachal Pradesh is very close to the finish line. States, there are other states like Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, a host of others that we worked with over the course of time, because everyone wants to be able to benefit their local populations with the crop that always grew here naturally. So really having that, and I would say honing that, is very, very critical to working with something like hemp or cannabis. And I would say, even before you set up a company, sometimes you have to build the parts before you build the plane. So that is essentially where I would say the journey really, really kick-started. Today, we have a very close association. My industry partners with, say, for example, the FSSAI, to provide them the dossier that helped them classify hemp seed as food items. Or, for example, working with the textile ministries or Ayush ministries or the health ministries. Having that engagement, multi-ministry, multi-department engagement, and having that regulatory navigation is sort of the backbone of which that really allowed us to build going forward as well.
No, so this is exactly what I was also thinking, that the major hurdle is primarily the compliances. There is nothing more to it, I think. And I think till 1985, there was no, cannabis was not a part of the Narcotics Act.
Yes,
I think
you're right.
1985 is when it was inducted in.
Yes, you're 100% right. In fact, in 1893, the British East India Company had commissioned an Indian Hemp Drugs Commission report to see whether hemp or cannabis drugs were being abused. What they realized through their survey, and is one of the most extensive surveys, is publicly available online, was the sheer integration of hemp or cannabis with people's daily life. Whether it was a yogi or a school teacher, or even the principal of a school, or a businessman, or even a government official, hemp or cannabis touched their life in some way or the other. In fact, it was the common solution for back pains or after heavy labor in the villages. It still is today. And that is essentially where I would say the genesis of its integration into our modern culture really, really began. And the commission report said, this doesn't need to be banned. Because of its legitimacy of use, because of its, I would say, ubiquitous nature of being part of Indian history and society, this is something that is safe, it's tolerable, people are using it effectively in different ways. But it's, as you correctly said, it's with time, like for example, post World War II, the entire drug scenario globally changed. Then it became a geopolitical weapon. That's where in 1961, I'll give you for example, it was in 1961, when the first convention on controlled substances, what eventually became narcotics, psychotropics, at a global United Nations level, sat together. Everyone said, agreed, okay, we have to ban certain hard drugs. And then cannabis came up as a topic. It was India that fought vociferously to ensure that bhang, that is the cannabis leaf, would be excluded from the definition of cannabis as a narcotic globally. They actually fought saying this is part of our history, our culture, our Ayurveda. We are not going to ban this as a narcotic. And because of that decision, then 60, 70 years later, the country has the benefit that patients are able to access such products today. So that foresightedness saved us temporarily, but it was just, I would say, the unfortunate geopolitical reality that in 85, we were compelled to create an act. And that came under a lot of international diplomatic pressure, a lot of levers were utilized, like information technology, other infrastructure projects, which could have been leveraged to say that, this act has to be created and you have to sort of fall in line. It's just ironic that the same countries that forced us to do that back in the day have walked to the polar end of what we are trying to do with hemp or cannabis today. Like you have recreational markets.
Yeah.
I would say the concentration of products of THC. THC is the compound that gets you high and that gives you nasha, but also helps you manage your pain and other symptoms. The concentration of it in countries like the US and Canada is ludicrous. And that's how far the countries that ironically have bound us or shackled us have walked away from those shackles. So I guess the world is changing. To give you an example, in 2020, 21 during COVID time, it was the Indian government that became the kingmaker vote at the United Nations Commission of Narcotic Drugs to reschedule cannabis, to move it from the worst, hardest schedule on par with heroin to a much lighter schedule that acknowledged its medical and therapeutic use. And that, I guess, is an affirmation of the fact that this is how our government has been thinking about it. And now it wants to be able to allow this industry to explode, gradually explode in different areas.
But tell me one thing, there is still a mainstream perception which needs to be broken for the products to go mainstream.
100%.
Right? And there is no doubt that the products might be of higher quality or they might be beneficial for you. It's just that to make it commercially available and to be used, that perception needs to change, and that needs to be done with the government at the forefront.
100%. I'll give you a couple of funny examples. So when we started as a company, we used to do a lot of course, the regulation bit is at the back end. We have research in the middle. We have our actual business and brand building at the front end. The brand building front end, as founders used to be, we are always hustling. So we used to be at farmers markets, organic markets, things like that. So once we were at a market just somewhere in Bombay, the heat of the summer, sun is on our head. And me and another founder, we had gotten hemp seeds, hemp food items, okay? We had imported them from a partner, from a partner globally. And we are putting them out there, and one old auntie walks up to us. And we give her a 10-minute breakdown, auntie, hemp iske liye acha hota hai, hemp uske liye acha hota hai, आप खा सकते हो, इसमें omegas है, अलसी का बीज छोड़ दो, ये वो. She's, by the end of 15 minutes, she's like, but ham तो non-veg है ना. Now, how do I go back and explain to auntie कि ham और hemp में क्या फर्क है? So that is where we started. Today is the fact that you would assume that most of our customers or users of our product would be between, 18 to 35. But you'd be surprised, our oldest customer is 101 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, we've had 84-year-old grandmas turn up to their doctors at 10 o'clock at night saying, come here to your clinic. And the doctor calls us up worried saying, listen, what have you done? I don't want to, face any risk of malpractice. We said, listen, don't worry, just go hear her out. We're here for anything you need. We had given him a topical oil for arthritis. She tried it for one day and she calls him to the clinic at night and says, why did you wait 40 years to give me this product? 40 years I've been in pain. Nothing you've given me has helped me. This has helped me in 24 hours. When the proof is in the pudding, that becomes a critical factor. But what is, as you correctly mentioned, there's so much taboo. If you go to an elderly person, they say, beta, ye nasha hai. They won't say, ye dawa hai, ya ye kapda hai, ya ye roti hai, ya makan hai. That the first point of contact is, ye nasha hai. That is where building local micro communities of thought leaders becomes important. And empowering the caregiver or the junior decision maker. Because in every house, it's the youngsters who are trusted to bring something that is safe, new, funky, innovative, and that can help or be able to contribute positively to their parents' life or their dada dadi's life. Being able to win their mind, becomes a key, I would say, pillar on which awareness or narrative building starts converting from negative to positive. But it's not an overnight phenomenon. It does take 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to actually see a result with even, say, one person. So that you're absolutely correct. When it comes to actually dispelling myths, it becomes critical. I'll give you another hilarious example. When we started, one of the areas we thought we would explore, and eventually we might as a company, is building material made from hemp fiber. Okay, so we had made a small brick, and a couple of my founders had gone to Goa to meet an architect, and they're explaining to him how this is really good. It sort of remediates or sequesters carbon. It gets stronger over the course of time. Technical features ABC. Architect stops him in the middle and he said, listen, on a serious, I want to ask you seriously, if I use this to make my building and my building's on fire, will I get high? I said, see, look, your priority, what is your priority in that moment? Is it saving your own life, or I mean, like, no, but then eventually you have to explain that, look, this is the building material. And same thing happens with clothes. For example, we have hemp shirts. People like, if I burn it, nasha hoga. ऐसे थोड़ी बहुत चलता है, you know, like, अगर आप cotton को ऐसा जलाओगे, nasha होगा, you know, like, so you have to really use, I would say, areas of a common association and build an analogous model to it, to be able to start plugging into something that is part of people's daily life and daily stream, and make it as, I would say, common, harmless as possible, and take it from the unsexy to the, oh yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So abhi दिक्कत कहाँ आ रही? मतलब I just want to understand that you can still do the distribution. You can still get the distribution, right?
Yes, very much so. And that is exactly what we're working on. क्योंकि हमारा जर्नी ऐसा था कि for the first 3 to 5 years, it was just about building the concept and the model. We did not know what direction we're going to head in. We tried everything under the sun. We made all white hemp shirts and handloom essentially. For example, one of our first products is we partnered with women artisans in rural Uttarakhand. We assisted them in getting hemp fiber, natural wild growing जो भांग fiber होता है, and they used to make amazing shawls and stoles and, you know, amazing stuff out of it. We used to help trade that and distribute that domestically as well as to global markets. Really expand the opportunity on horizon. So a lot of it in the first few years was dabbling to understand कि regulation में पहले convince करना है एक side पे. दूसरा है कि अगर regulation भी हो जाए, समझो state allows you to legally grow. अगर आपके पास बीज नहीं है उगाने के लिए, like any other agriculture crop, आप क्या करोगे? This whole exercise was exercise in redundancy. So then we started focusing a lot on plant breeding work. We started partnering with scientific institutes to help build, I would say, strategic value, because we realized it is impossible to build revenue with something that is still so nascent in the mind of a consumer. We first need to find what fits from what industry category product into what consumer channel. And that journey itself of identifying what type of, I would say, PMF that we get in different areas, that itself was the latter 5 years that we built. So it took 5 years just to build the foundation कि regulation करना है, seed breeding भी करना है, you know, working with state governments करना है, 2-3 types of products बनाना है, and helped us identify कि रोटी, कपड़ा, Makan, Dawai, these are the core areas that help not just build a company but help build a nation when you think about it in a larger way as well. So that helped us identify कि हम पहले कपड़ा के साथ शुरू करते हैं. That because this is the least risky. No one is, the least questions are going to come about this. There's more room for innovativeness. You can expand into new areas. We started partnering with some of India's biggest textile companies, India's biggest designers, getting the word of hemp out there, getting it sexy first before anything. And creating that impression that there is this material, that it is existing, it can be utilized, and today hemp fabric and hemp clothing is almost everywhere in the country. It's growing as a segment rapidly. Today, I would say that, for example, one of the coolest things we did was when we started to build awareness, there was a member of parliament called Tathagat Satpathy. He was from the Biju Janata Dal, BJD in Odisha, very senior leader. He's the chief whip of the party in the Lok Sabha and stuff. He had done a Reddit Ask Me Anything, AMA, back in the day, and he had just offhand mentioned that he'd consumed cannabis in college, and, you know, like unlike Clinton, unlike Nixon, I inhaled. So, you know, like that type of commonality he built. So interestingly enough, I reached out to him. I said, let's do something interesting. What he did was we got a size of his kurta and we made a full hemp kurta for him. This gentleman went on the floor of the Lok Sabha at the time, I would say a couple of years ago, when Jammu and Kashmir was even more hot on the news about how development and employment would happen. And he says, why don't we just do hemp in J&K? This is made 100% out of bhang or hemp. We could empower and rebuild the entire economic model of the society. And straight after that, 10 members of parliament came to him from 10 different parties saying, "Kaun sa material? Ye bhang, kaise ho sakta hai?" That helps turn something into a wildfire. And being able to create that type of channeling becomes very critical. So we said we start with textiles, we start with the fiber. We then move to the hemp seed, the hemp food, the nutrition part. Because then gradually people wear it, then they start applying it, then they start consuming it. And that type of evolution and journey is where essentially we realized that helps build confidence when it comes to a new first generation user or first generation sort of consumer or product.
और is this from an economical standpoint, is it from a cost perspective, is it similar to the usual textiles which are material which is used?
Bilkul, it took 10 years to get to a point. When we started, it was 25-30% more dearer, more premium. Today, it's on par. And if you remember, just last year, there was a huge spike in the cotton prices globally because there was a lot of sort of geopolitics around the demand supply at that point in time. At that point in time, hemp had just gone below cotton on a price per meter with certain types of blends and stuff like that. So we've now reached that point. On average, it's still about 10 to 15% more premium because you have to remember cotton, you're talking about 30 to 35 square million acres growing globally. Hemp is barely 2 or 3. Once that scale comes in, and can you imagine, with barely 1 to 2 million square acres, of which only half is used for textile, it is still at a 10-15% premium. Moment that scales, it's inevitable that the price will go even further below as well.
ये लेकिन थोड़ा सा एक पैराडॉक्स नहीं है कि इंडिया का ये है, is an Indian product and now the West is the one who's kind of capitalizing it and turning it into $1 trillion economy right now.
Exactly.
How did this change in heart happen?
I would say, see, when you look at the West, let's identify a few areas. Let's look at Canada or the United States. For them in those territories, it was not an overnight battle. They're still battling it today. It took almost 10-20 years for them to even come out with hemp regulation and for the US to recognize hemp in their farm bill. It just happened barely less than 3-4 years, 5 years ago. But they started their journey, Canada started its journey in 2001 to 2003. And today they are one of the largest recreational cannabis markets, one of the largest medical markets, in fact, they don't do hemp because of temperate climate as much and stuff like that. But the US today has now gradually become the second largest producer, the largest producer of hemp fiber or hemp seeds in the world. But it did take them 10-20 years to build the backbone. It involves everyone coming together, whether it's academia on one side, industry on one side, government on one side, the larger ecosystem of operations or logistics on the other. And creating that is not something that can happen in 3 to 5 years. For the longest time, we were the only company. For 5 years, we were the only company in hemp or cannabis space. There's few small upstarts here and there. Today, there are now 80 companies. Every year now, there are 5-10 new companies coming in. Now, the ecosystem is gradually thriving, where there are more players and operators, where that demand for India-based hemp or cannabis products is now gradually being met. People have been aching and yearning for Himalayan hemp or hemp from the Himalayas or cannabis products from the Himalayas. The problem was the lack of supply or access to quality goods. That has been changing. But again, that will still take another 7 to 10 years to reach a point where it will start matching up to your China or the United States. Similar to how they say, right? It takes a decade and a half to become an overnight success. That's the journey I guess India's on.
But मुझे ये समझाओ ना सर कि I want to understand how's this whole hemp ecosystem shaping up. I mean, of course, there is a huge market for recreational drugs, but then there are so many other utilities which we talked about, right? From clothes to food to oil to nanofibers. I just want to understand कि अभी this is kind of, as you rightly pointed out, an agricultural revolution 2.0 is happening on a global scale.
Exactly.
At this point. तो यहाँ पे do the textile companies become a kind of a deterrent for you guys, or would they be joining the forces?
Honestly, they're an enabler. Of the top 10 textile companies in India, we're probably working with 50 to 70% of that list. We've been continuously working. For example, the first ever Levi's jeans were made out of hemp. Today, all the global jean brands, all the sustainable brands in the US that launch at Target or Walmart want hemp. Where the first source of supply or first port of call is China. Now, assume China takes a decision that I don't want to cultivate hemp for textile, which is, of course, a national decision they take. I don't want to do it for something else. Who will fill the gap? It's countries like India that need to step in. And for 10 years, that interest has been there from the textile companies and industries. Now that interest, I would say, has now been mirrored by your guys in food and cosmetics and CPG and pharma and other composite industries, paper industries. The sky's the limit, honestly, is how we've seen things go about. A lot of large industries, which is the national phenomenon, tend to wait to see what younger upstarts are doing, let it reach a stage of maturity, and then start combining forces. We were fortunate enough that a lot of the textile companies that we worked with were believers from the get-go, because they travel globally, they're well known, they're looking at hemp textiles in the UK but are made in China and saying, why can't India do this? Now there's someone who can solve that problem for them, be able to source materials globally, source materials domestically, and help plug that gap. That helps them solve problems for their consumers and users as well. So enabling that ecosystem, rather that ecosystem being an enabler rather than a deterrent, is how we've sort of seen the flow of things, especially when it comes to hemp or cannabis. Everyone, it's alluring. It is like that shimmering diamond in the corner of your eye that you want to tap into and explore and make yours. But finding the right partner to see how you can get it in your hands and create value out of it becomes very, very important.
So one last question about the ecosystem. Abhi, with what stage are you looking at the eco? मतलब इसमें मार्केट सबसे बड़ा अभी कहाँ पे? वेस्ट में है, ईस्ट में है, इंडिया के अंदर मार्केट कितना बड़ा है कि यहाँ से माल बना करके आप यूएस एक्सपोर्ट करोगे? Where is the bigger market?
Honestly, I'll tell you, India is an evolving market. जब हमने शुरू किया था, ये market size was unestimatable. But today you can even estimate कि on average that the health and wellness segment, that is जो hemp seeds होता है, the bhang leaf in Ayurvedic medicine, the medical use cases, that is already now growing to about 80 to 100 crore market size, just in India alone. This has barely happened in the last, say, 5-10 years. Not even 10 years, the last 3 to 5 years, especially post-COVID, there's been enormous growth. There are 80 companies doing different things, amazing things in different parts of the country as well. And that is what we're seeing, that the growth is there, but we are in the first phase of growth as a market. There are markets, as you correctly said, जो phase 4 में है, phase 5 में है. They've reached a point of saturation and maturity where they are now looking for something innovative in hemp and cannabis that they otherwise would not have.
Which countries are these?
Where, for example, the likes of Australia, the likes of Latin American countries like Brazil and Argentina, countries like Canada are now looking to India saying, can you supply us with materials? Because everything is grown there. But if something is grown in Himachal and Uttarakhand by a farmer with a social enterprise based company, now that's a story. People want stories, experiences, they want journeys. Anyone can make a product, but the story or the narrative you build around it, that you form an association or bond. Every time you consume something, you think of that organization that made it happen for you. That is sort of the real gold that people are looking for.
So India then becomes the supply hub.
Exactly.
One of the bigger exporters.
Exactly. So for us, primarily, India is the primary market. But now gradually we've realized building the export to be sort of an eventual split 50-50 is very, very critical.
So there is a good contribution to the GDP that is to be done from the hemp ecosystem. Huh?
Exactly. And that is how you contribute to A, nation building, and B, narrative recreation. Yeah. See, there's a saying that someone said a long time back to me, was that, Jahan, the modern day illiterate person is not someone who can't read or write. It is someone who can't learn, unlearn and relearn.
Yeah.
And that is essentially the foundation or ethos that we're building. To be able to, you've already learned some false narrative or false perception about this. Let us help you unlearn it and then relearn it the right way. And by doing that, that really helps grow the segment in such a point that you would, the types of users of products, the types of consumers you would encounter, it'd be hard to fathom when you first started this journey that this is the demographic that we thought we would never achieve. But today they're the first ones in line saying, this product is helping me, this product is making a difference in my life.
नहीं यार ये तो I think this is a, as I said यार, this is a $1 trillion market opportunity. And India में how many companies are there which are working with you?
I would say close to, now it's between 80 to 100 that are working on this.
Do you require special license for this or?
See, it depends on what part of the plant you work with. Okay, so when you talk about the hemp fiber जो textiles है, carte blanche, no licenses, no permissions, is recognized as a natural fiber. ठीक है? When you talk of hemp seeds as a food, there are FSSAI licenses you need, Food Safety Standard Authority of India, basic compliance that you require. When it comes to using the bhang leaf in Ayurvedic medicine, you majorly need manufacturing licenses. There are no sale and trade licenses in this element. So the sale of this in different states is completely legal. The biggest critical factor being when you have a bhang in Ayurvedic medicine, bhang is recognized as the Schedule E1 ingredient, which means it needs to be taken under medical supervision. So that's why when it's a consumable product, Ayurvedic medicine from bhang, it has to be under a prescription, whether by an Ayurvedic practitioner, modern medicine practitioner, depending on who your doctor is as well. So there are legal systems, license ways to get this, whether through teleconsultations, whether through buying online or D2C, whether buying offline through pharmacies and clinics which were already very well established, where in almost 200 or 250 plus pharmacies, including Wellness, Noble Plus, Sapna Chemist, Organic World, across several different states in the country as well.
Interesting. Now, Jahan, I wanna go into the next phase, which is you starting the company and you as an individual. When you started off, what was the reaction of your family? ये क्या कर रहा है? पागल हो गया ये? What was the reaction? Were they supportive? What was the general perception of the people around you?
Sure. So I think just to shed a bit of light on that and sort of like a bit more about my background as well. Essentially, I came from a very unconventional, multicultural family. Was raised in a single parent household, raised by my mom. So I was always encouraged to pursue new boundaries, be able to sort of touch new horizons that you would not conventionally do. So I wasn't a top 10 kid or a top 5 kid, but I used to represent my school in quizzes because I was very smart. I was always learning, trying to read a bit more about the world, try to be in tune, because essentially that's the reality we live in. It's important to know what's happening around you every day. So it was thanks to the ability to pursue that, I would say, that cultural innovation, be able to sort of go into uncharted territories, that there was no limitation to be able to venture into an area that would have been perceived as risky. I was always encouraged to say with my mom saying, look, Jahan, if you believe in it, that's all that's required. If you think there is something in this, go for it. Because you're either going to win, you're either going to succeed, or you're going to learn. There's no failure in this. You can get back up, dust off your shoulders, and keep moving on. And incidentally enough, for all our 7 founders, all our parents have always been extremely supportive. Right from the get-go. Earlier, of course, some of the founders apprehension ki, acha, this is not ganja, we're not drug dealers, like that's, we're not Pablo Escobar, like that's not the game plan here. So, that was their initial trepidations and apprehensions, but I think those got dispelled very quickly, very easily for most of them. Touch wood, fortunately for me, no such apprehensions. In fact, because the family lived in Australia, we were very globally exposed. That know-how, knowledge was there to say, okay, so one of my aunts was one of the first people to say, body shops, come back to tell me body shops stopped selling product in Australia, is a hemp-based foot cream. So if Body Shop is doing this, what's stopping you guys? So yeah, I guess
interesting. And when you people started off, this is a for-profit organization.
Correct. We are for-profit.
So if you are a for-profit organization, you would have some semblance कि यार पैसा किधर से बनेगा, ये तो market ही अभी ready नहीं है यहाँ पे.
Correct.
So what was your thought when it came to यार ये तो पूरा awareness creation, you'll have to go through government lobbies, trying and understanding regulations, काफी मतलब ऐसे मार्केट में घुसने में लोगों की हालत खराब होती है
बुरी
यार,
तरह
तो फिर
खराब।
आप कैसे, how did you
आज भी बुरी तरह खराब होती है कभी कभी, you know, like, but see, look, this is the reality, this is the peril of doing something that has never been done before, that doesn't have the precedent, but is something that inevitably needs to be done. That is the sheer reality of what we're dealing with. It's like with any other new innovation, whether you're talking about innovative gaming, whether you're talking about artificial intelligence, these are boundaries that we've never crossed before. These are horizons we've never seen before.
but my question here is, वहां पे भी आपके पास एक ग्लोबल प्रेसिडेंट होता है कि चलो वहां हो रहा है, यहाँ हो रहा है, but 2013 के टाइम में तो आई थिंक
हाँ बिल्कुल था. We point to China. Best thing we used to do is say, sir, China में they are growing 500,000 hectares and they are contributing X billion dollars to the economy. India नहीं कर रहा है और ये हमारा पौधा है. Then the reality strikes everyone. Say, China कर रहे तो हम क्यों नहीं कर रहे? Now reached a point where now you have, like as I mentioned, Australia is doing it. You have Lesotho doing it. You have Malawi doing it. You say, sir, African countries कर रहे हैं, वहाँ पे भांग उगता भी नहीं है naturally. That really stirs an emotion amongst people, amongst the regulators, the ecosystem, to see that precedence is there. And around the same time we were building was when Canada's system had now begun to take off. To say, Canada में चल रहा है, अभी US भी शुरू कर रहा है. India should not miss the boat on this one. And that really, that FOMO of not missing something that is actually ours was very real. That today, even till today, people are very, very clear that India needs to succeed at this, and that's why lage rehna padega. Whatever it takes, hell or high water. Touch wood, even your bureaucracy, who you think would, like your police or your excise and all, who would be the biggest harbingers of doom, sometimes are the biggest saviors. They are the ones who guide you the right way, who listen to you, who help you create that ecosystem working together between industry and bureaucracy as well. So that support is there. It's just quiet. It's not as vocal as support as, you know, other places are.
But इसमें फिर जितने भी लोग बना रहे हैं cannabis या you know, hemp care on products, do people have a consortium of your own?
Definitely. In fact, this was one of the realities we came to terms with कि जो दरवाज़ा मैं खटखटाता हूँ, 2 महीने के बाद आप खटखटाता हो. And then because of that, our messaging becomes mixed, it becomes confused, and the government doesn't know how to proceed. So that is essentially where us along with about 20-30 other companies created one of India's first industry associations. It's called PIMCHA, Pan India Medical Cannabis and Hemp Association. And the first president or chairman was my co-founder, who leads our legal and our regulation side. His name is Delzad. So even today, he's the chairman of this, and becomes a common forum and consortium, as you said. जहाँ पे the voice becomes common. End of the day, every industry has its challenges. Some people want this, some people want that. But there are common areas that we need to solve for that become much easier for everyone else. Sometimes it becomes lonely when you're doing something without precedence. And then you are 30 companies sitting in different parts of India who are feeling lonely in isolation. Sometimes it's important to come together even for solidarity, so that you know you're on the right path. If you're not on the right path, someone is there to guide you. And there is that degree of harmony to say, look, these are the common standards, guidelines, SOPs that we all seem to follow. And the government listens to this, say, okay, you know what, this makes sense. I'm going to actually use this as a template to monitor how others are doing this. And that sort of helps build the ecosystem further as well.
So, abhi tak, I think in the past, what's almost 10 years now, nahi?
10 now, going on 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's 10 years. So 10 साल में यार, you've seen the outlook of the industry change, you've seen the world kind of change. From a business perspective, how have the years been like? If you can run me through, यार year 1, year 2 तो यही समझने में लग गया, फिर 3 to 5, this is what happened, and now this is what.
Exactly. So I would say, see, first it was as I mentioned earlier, that first 4-5 years was just finding the right fit. What fits where? PMF. Then was about early day growth. We realized that we will have to divide growth into different phases, because we're talking health and wellness one side, we're talking textiles one side. ये हाथ से कभी मिला ही नहीं है. So when you're talking to the consumer of B2B textiles versus the D2C health and wellness, these are not the same people. So that is where a founding team of 7 becomes critical, where people are sort of mission oriented in different directions, and then you come together a common platform, and then you sort of weigh this out. There's a saying that sometimes when you're waiting for a bus, you wait 1 hour and एक bus भी नहीं आता है, but then आप 5 minutes रहते हो 2 bus आते हैं. That is how business growth has been with this industry. First, it was about just proving, finding the model right fit, but that itself evolved, it iterated itself, and then reached a point where today, now where we've moved from early day growth phase 1 to now we're seeing that rapid growth phase 2 and the expansion really take off. So what was, for example, just one user of a roll-on product for menstrual pain is now 100, because that one is bringing back 5 who's bringing back 10. And that type of stickiness, that type of readiness for such products, that type of open-mindedness to try something जो पहले try नहीं किया है, देखता हूँ या देखती हूँ कि अगर ये work होता है, once it works, it sticks, then it builds that traction, because then it's in everyone's WhatsApp group, everyone's sort of Telegram groups, etc. And then you start seeing takeoff. So we're in that phase 2 of growth where takeoff is takeoff and expansion is inevitable now from next few steps.
And so currently you sell via partners, or BoHeCo has its own line of?
I mean, we're omni-channel, because I guess omnipresence becomes critical. It's an inevitable realization many D2C brands have had through the course. We were lucky enough that chance and circumstances helped us get that understanding.
Do you also have whitelisted products? As in where you're partnered up with textiles and
Correct.
pharmas and their brand, but it's being this thing is being sold by BoHeCo?
Yes, exactly. So essentially what we do is, I'll break it down for you. When it comes to channels, we are omni-channel, online and offline. We are on our own websites rather, as well as online third party. So we're on Amazon, Farmeasy, MyUpchar, all of the conventional ones, as well as about 30-35 others that have other audiences. Offline, we are in several pharmacies, chains, clinics, resorts, wellness spas, etc. in, I would say, majorly Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore, but now also in areas like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, expanding across into different cities as well. We also have our own clinics, which are India's first Ayurvedic medical cannabis clinics, or hemp clinics. Well, first one was in Bangalore. We set up at the height of COVID, incidentally enough. Got great success. Now we have just launched our one in Delhi just about 5 days ago. So if in case anyone is in Delhi, wants to check out hemp cannabis products, would love to have you and host you guys there. And then more cities coming soon, Hyderabad, Chennai. When it comes to what you mentioned, even in the white labeling, our model is essentially divided into 2 parts. We have the B2C that contributes most of our revenue growth, but yes, we do have a B2B approach where we do white labeling. We have sort of an Intel Inside model that is hemp powered by BoHeCo. So today we work with Samsara Gin. I'm pretty sure you guys would have heard of that. They have a hemp gin, so we're their partners on that. Or Beardo's hemp products, where they're partners in that area. Tags has hemp cookies, partners again. Or Wiggles or other pet care brands have hemp-based products for the dogs and for the cats. Again, we're the guys who partner with them in these areas. Because we realize it is not a solo effort. If you need to grow an industry, you need to empower industry ecosystem players and operators. Sometimes it is about being magnanimous enough to say there is more success in 100 people winning than just one winning.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, should I go out and ask for BoHeCo products and people will have it?
Yeah, absolutely. People will definitely have it. Particularly what we have seen, and you'd be surprised that, I mean, I get calls from like Chakrata in Uttarakhand or Firozpur in Punjab or, Mau or, parts of Shillong. Wow. It's spread so far that you would have, it's not uncommon for some of us founders, for someone to come up to a party and say, whether in Mumbai or whether in Delhi, or for us to go to a conference in say South India and someone to say, my mom or my aunt has been using a product, we love it, thank you so much. And that is what we do this for. That is why we do this every single day, to have that motivates the passion to say we are helping people, we're changing lives, we're making a difference. And we ourselves are surprised that somebody's used it. So for example, we have there's this gentleman who reached out to me from Calcutta. he was consuming clonazepam to help him with his sleep, benzodiazepine. We put him in touch with our doctor for prescription, prescribed him a product. For 3 years, he has not touched a benzodiazepine. He only uses our product. Helps him with his sleep. He's a 70-year-old gentleman. Today, all of his friends, his entire ecosystem, are ones using our product and our medicine. So that type of, I would say, cascading impact we do see, and sometimes we are pleasantly surprised कि कहाँ तक पहुँच सकता है.
So एक तो यार, amongst all the different products that you have, which one has the best margins for you guys?
I would say majorly the bhang-based Ayurvedic medicines, especially the consumable and the topical products. We have high margins, but that also gives us an advantage that we are able to pass on the margins to, say, distributors or channels जो पहले ऐसे product use नहीं किया है.
Trade incentives are the best way to go.
Exactly. And eventually, see, when what's unique about this is trade incentives is one part of the battle that your partner has. The other part is the confidence and hand holding and support you need to give them. Because when you talk of hemp, people have a lot of questions. क्या ये safe है? क्या ये effective है? कुछ ये नशा तो नहीं होगा? इसमें impurities नहीं होंगे? So by having that technical soundness, constantly testing products, because today we are one of the first companies in India that actually does human grade clinical trials on our products. We've actually finished trials on osteoarthritis, on eczema. And the results are mind-blowing. We did this at NI, National Institute of Ayurveda in Jaipur. And we also have trials on breast cancer, palliative care at Tata Memorial in Mumbai as well going on. We have other trials lined up with other institutes. That creates evidence. Because now, today, everyone is educated through hyper-digitization. Everyone knows kahan se dhoondna information. If you can create information or data that says it's safe, it's tolerable, it's effective, and no better way than science to use these pathways. That builds a convincing argument, and that's the battle half won when it comes to these things.
Yeah. Or in general, as an entrepreneur, what would you tell anybody who's planning to start in this hemp ecosystem? What will be your word of advice for them?
First word of advice, temper your expectations. Do not expect to grow a 1 million, 10 million or $100 million business in 3 years. It was not going to happen. That is not how the cyclic effect of this industry is. It is slow moving and it will see explosion of growth in micro cycles. That is how things will work. Second is work in your area of expertise and passion. Find domains. Don't try and do everything under the sun. Don't try and be the expert of everything. Choose one lane, choose one path and keep hammering. See where the success in that path is coming. Third is build a loyal community around what you're doing. Look, your community, essentially, what is the difference between traction and revenue? Traction is when you go from your mom and your uncles enjoying it to somebody you don't know enjoying it. Being able to create a steady path that will take 2 years, maybe take 3 years. Get ready to be able to give up that time and effort and patience and energy to contribute to this system. That becomes very, very critical. And most importantly, with each micro success, maintain humility, but see on how you can build the success. Be a lateral thinker as much as possible. Your path is not a straight line. Essentially, you are climbing a mountain very few others have climbed. Many have withered away trying to get to the summit. Most of us are not even close to the summit. So you have to remember that this is a marathon. This is not a 100-meter race. So I would say these are a couple of expectations to set when you're entering this space. That being said, it's enormously exciting. It's invigorating. It is addictive to be in and around the space of hemp and cannabis just by the sheer difference it makes on a day-to-day basis. Just the sheer impact it has, that is the high you start chasing. Ironically enough, when it comes to
I was gonna say कि हाँ थोड़ा सा तो धुआं But any interesting company apart from BoHeCo which is doing a fabulous job in India, right?
Yeah, I would say there are some great guys, like shout out to the likes of India Hemp and Co, Jayanti and Co. They won Shark Tank. I think you guys might have seen the episode of Hemp, doing great work in the hemp food space. They've come out with an amazing hemp kombucha. This is fantastic, is what many folks have told me. There are companies that are working on hemp-based mufflers for your two-wheelers and your four-wheelers. Guys who are working on hemp-based paper, OG Hemp, which is a fantastic company. I think they've started exporting hemp paper to other countries because people are looking at India as a hub. The guy likes of Green Jams who are working in sort of green building materials, and Go Hemp, which is an amazing company in Uttarakhand that's doing fantastic work on the ground. A lot of peers who are working similar circles like the likes of Hemp Street. They've got a great name. They're doing difference between us and them is they do classical medicine, so they do churans and vattis, which are more common with the Ayurvedic doctors, but making a big difference. One of their products is a great product for menstrual pain. So there are a lot of peers, and we have a lot of admiration and respect for them on their journey, because this is a journey we're all undertaking together. I'd say.
Yeah. And any myths that you want to bust about cannabis or hemp?
Yes, I would say majorly when you think of hemp, it isn't always going to get you high. When you talk of hemp or cannabis and you think nasha, you think of something that has a good amount of THC. But what's funny is THC is also what helps, say, manage your pain from arthritis or, spondylitis. Or for example, if you're a heavy gym goer and your muscles have inflammation or swelling, THC and CBD combine to actually reduce the swelling, reduce the pain, that perception of pain, that impact of pain as well. So I would say one of the biggest myths is the legality of how you can access these products. A lot of people think as a consumer you need licenses. No such thing. You have an amazing market in India where hemp or cannabis products, whether for different use cases, are making a difference without getting you high. And there, the only high that you have is being able to be high on fashion or high on life or high on energy or high on nutrition. So if that is what you're looking for, hemp or cannabis is the way to go with your life.
So Jahan, tell me about your team. So you have 7 co-founders.
Yes, correct.
And how big is your team now?
We're somewhere between 33 and 35 of us.
And is this the usual departments that you have, or you have R&D specific?
Yeah, you're
departments?
right. You're right. In fact, the first person we hired in our company was a plant breeder who bred opium for the government.
What?
For pharmaceutical use cases.
Wow.
So he used to work with the CSIR institute called NBRI, National Botanical Research Institute.
Yeah.
Touchwood, we poached him because he believed in the mission. He said, look, I've gone as far as I can go in this line. I think cannabis has enormous potential. In fact, even today, we're, for example, one of the first companies to legally cultivate cannabis in India in research projects. We have one of the largest seed banks in Lucknow, based out of Lucknow, on government property. He leads all our breeding works to develop the seeds to cultivate legally. And just last year, we did a commercial cultivation in Bageshwar, in Mankot area, Bageshwar in Uttarakhand, on 5 acres of land and with villagers. And he was the one who trained them, gave them the know-how, planted the seeds, led the whole project. So he's one of the wings of our R&D. That is sort of the breeding and the plant-based R&D. There's also the formulation and product development where our head of R&D is a phytochemist who used to work with Himalaya and a couple of Flipkart-backed startups. Brilliant guy, doctor, PhD, natural product chemistry, and he leads a team including Ayurvedic medical practitioners and sort of other scientific minds as well. So we realize inevitably and this one reality as a startup is inevitably you need to start passing on the baton to professionalize your organization. There will be people in the world that will be better at you than the job you're doing as a growth hacker, as a promoter. And the quicker you professionalize a system, the quicker you move as an organization. So touchwood, we realized that early on. So today we have segmented teams, your ops guys, your marketing guys, F&A guys. On top of that, you have your R&D guys, your legal guys, all sort of siloed and segmented, where each team has an interdependency, and creating those channels of interdependence and ensuring that everyone is accountable and responsible for each other. That atmosphere creates a very strong harmony. So touchwood, whether it's your R&D person who's doing phytochemistry or marketing and comms person who doesn't understand a lick of science, they both still and eat at the same lunch table and talk about the same things and build that common association and union as well. Yeah. So it's very interesting to see it happen in front of your own two eyes, right?
Wow. So I think yours would be one of the toughest companies to hire for.
It is. Honestly, it's been, for example, to hire a head of R&D, I remember it was during COVID when we needed to hire. I had to do 57 interviews to get the right candidate. took me 52 to 57, somewhere in that number. It's the same phenomenon. Because first of all, is finding a candidate meritorious enough to match it. Second of all, we are not a publicly listed or Series E, Series F type growth company right now. So there are limitations in terms of what resources you can offer to a person. Third is what you mentioned earlier, the perception their families would have of them even entering this business. That is the type of invisible concerns that we have to realize we have to inevitably deal with. So finding someone within this small Venn diagram becomes very complicated. But touch wood, the quality or caliber of candidates that come out when you have to be selective, I would say is on par with the top of industry standards, and we're very fortunate enough that we've seen some of the best talent we work with. So for example, we have a doctor marketing division because they reach out to doctors and stuff. MRs and stuff like that. That's led by a former a senior manager from Cadillac. So the guys who are able to make the switch over from conventional pharmaceutical drugs to come into hemp and cannabis and believe in it, not just buy into the company, but buy into the philosophy, love what you're doing, be able to believe in what you're selling. That journey itself, watching in front of your own eyes, is sometimes both, I would say, insightful and fascinating, and sometimes infuriating, because it's always an oscillation between the best of times and the worst of times. But it helps build character while you do that.
Yeah. And I also wanna know a little bit about the in general how, I mean, once the team basically gets built, what's the culture like? Is it are you people, I mean, I'm sure that the attrition would be quite low, the way I look at it.
It is. But see, one thing we've realized, especially during COVID and post-COVID, is the concept of attrition has also changed, right? Because there are other different factors as well involved. That being said, by industry standards, we are much lower in attrition. For us, it is always about refreshing the zeal and passion of the existing pool. When it comes to culture, one thing about culture that we realize as a fallacy is that you walk into pre-existing culture. That's wrong. That's when you start with a startup, you assume that culture will form itself. No, but you have to be cognizant of every step you take when you build culture. For example, all our teams eat together. Or for example, just last week, we had sessions together on how to save a life. Say someone has a heart attack, or someone has blood pressure issues. It's the in-house Ayurvedic doctor as part of R&D team who's the one who's educating and guiding people. At the same time, in the same week, you have a workshop by another employee who is almost professional in salsa or bachata, who's training all of us on how to dance. So when you're doing these activities, it's not the activities that's the culture. It's that intangible bond that forms while you do this that helps build that culture of discipline, and most importantly, passion and compassion. You have to be passionate about what you do, but you have to be compassionate and empathetic about how others, not just within your ecosystem, but in trailing ecosystems, respond to your behavior, your actions as well. So that culture is an ever-evolving process. We started a long time back, but with the team that started with 7 founders back in the day is not the same team today. The team keeps growing. It's an amorphous type of body that you welcome different pieces that help build I would say, the foundation on which the tent of culture sort of thrives.
कोई आकर के नहीं बोलता सर यहाँ पे मिलता है कि नहीं फूकने को?
बहुत सुना है मैंने बहुत सुना है
सर यहाँ पे तो मिलता होगा तब तो मैं जरूर आ रहा हूँ सर ज्वाइन करता हूँ मैं कल से
वो ये हमारे राउंड 1 कैंडिडेट्स
people got funded.
Yes. Touch wood, we've received a good amount of funding over the last 5 years. Very lucky that some of our first believers are industry titans. So our first investor is Mr. Ratan Tata. And that also was another story of how we convinced him. And essentially it was, there used to be this thing called X Prize. I don't know if you know, it is sponsored by Google. For
competition हुआ करता था.
Correct, moonshot missions and stuff. जब X Prize India में launch हुआ था, we were part of the Ashoka networks and all that time because of the work we're doing. And touch wood, thanks to the ecosystem and networks we built, we were invited to the XPRIZE launch. Peter Diamandis of XPRIZE was there. And we didn't know who to expect. So it is a Blue Frog, what is now Toit. Okay, so we reached there, and as many know, Mr. Ratan Tata, he has no security. He walks around as his own man, very confident who he is, and we see him there and we don't expect him there. But what happened was 6 months before that, we had a team building exercise in our first year of BoHeCo, where all us founders sat at the end of the year and we said, look, where do we want to be? This is 2014. Where do we want to be in 2054, 2064? One of the questions in that exercise 6 months before this was, who do we want as the first investor in this company? All of us said, you have to write your own shits, no talking, no cross discussion. Everyone had written Ratan Tata. And the stars just aligned. 6 months later, we saw him at this event and we said, okay. And before this event, we said, if we ever meet him, we need to have a game plan because we won't get much time. We have 1 minute. We need to make the most of it. So we look out our fielding. One of our guys asked a question. So, then the presence is there. Okay, what's this company, what they're doing? One of our guys was stationed at the exit. And then the Parsi was entrusted that, look, you have to do something unconventional. He got up in the middle and he went to the washroom. I said, this is my chance. Now, you've heard of elevator pitches, but have you ever heard of a bathroom pitch? Now, I waited for him to get to run his business, waited near the sink, washed his hands. Soon as he turns, I said, I have 1 minute. I said, Mr. Tata, I'm Parsi. Great to meet you, big admirer, working in agriculture, working with hemp. Moment I said hemp, his eyes sparkled. He said, hemp, I know about that. Take my card, get in touch. Would love to learn more. It took me 8.5 months to get that meeting. Okay, 8.5 months. Every 2 weeks, I called his PA. Today, we're very good friends, his PA and I. And we built a very good rapport. But every 2 weeks, to the point that as soon as she picked up the phone, she heard the hello. She'd be like, Jahan, not this week. Try again next week. Finally, 8.5 months later, we get the meeting. And before that, we were sussing out other startups that he had funded because he had just entered into the angel investing arena. Okay, and a couple of startups we met had told us, look, when you have your first meeting, you're not going to meet him. You're going to meet his team, and then once his team is convinced, you will meet him. I said, okay, fine, fair enough. Turn up at his office. The first thing that puts us is ease. I'm sure everyone knows Mr. Tata is a big fan of dogs. Walk into his office, okay, this is the Bombay house, that, main office. On the floor of right past the reception, there is a dog fast asleep. Right in the main area where you're walking. Immediately you're comfortable because we love our dogs. We look into his cabin, we're waiting outside. There is no team. It is just Mr. Ratan Tata and he says, come in. And for 3 hours, it is 3 of us founders and just Mr. Ratan Tata. And we take him through the entire journey, the game plan, our vision. And then he says, how can I help? And we say, okay, we need some help with funding for research through the Tata Trust. And we want your support. And he came in as our first investor. Then the likes of Rajan Anand and Rajan from Peak 15 was our second. The Gits food family, based out of Pune, food processing, because there's some strategic vision, was one of the investors. The Singularity Ventures, led by Yashkela and Co. They had come in early. Then it sort of led to the flood of, today we're very fortunate. We have I would say industry titans across. We have large spectrum of strategic investors, the likes of founders of listed Canadian cannabis companies, guys who can bring global insight. The promoters of the Vijon Group. They participated. Some of the promoters of the Mohan Meakin family, the Old Monk side, that family. A couple of partners of VC funds, hedge funds, pharma veterans, guys who worked in the narcotic and pharma space. Everyone, it's like a family now that we build, because everyone realizes, as you said, it's $1 trillion industry. You can go anywhere. So you need all types of minds to be able to come together to grow something like this. And touchwood has been good. We're also in sort of our growth fundraising stage as well, in talks with some exciting prospects, and hopefully in the next podcast should have even better news for you guys.
Hopefully, touchwood. Hopefully things will work out well. I also want to understand what's the market has, of course, towards the West has become, and even in India, the investors' interest had peaked, but now it has kind of become mellow.
It has mellowed.
What's your take? I mean, why has that happened? And I mean, I think are we waiting for another poster child to be created like BoHeCo was back then for the interest to come back?
When I speak of this, honestly, that is the inevitable reality. If you look at the Canadian market, let's take a step back. It was the similar boom and bust cycle. When we were in our finding our feet phase, Canada boomed. Today, for example, Canopy Growth Corporation got $5 billion in funding from Constellation Brands. But now they're in the bust cycle because they just produce so much hemp and cannabis. They oversupplied without focusing on enough demand. And we realized getting this equilibrium is critical. For that, we understood that when we started, we're talking 100 or 1,000 different users. Today, they're in the lakhs. Once that touches the tens of lakhs and crores, which it's inevitably going to do in this next cycle, just with the sheer success of hemp and cannabis products, we are already seeing the tailwinds of your institutional investor community keeping an eye. They've been watching it. I'm sure you would have seen Nitin from Rain Matter also came out and said, look, we're looking to put money in hemp startups because there's there's good growth. The biggest risk for a lot of institutional investors is regulatory risk.
Yeah.
The other risk is, who are your limited partners? Who are your LPs? We were in talks, for example, with one institutional fund back in the day, but they backed out last minute. You know why? The fund believed in us, believed in the market, believed in the vision, but the LP was the Church of England. So just by the misconceived notion that this is a sin business, it's not technically sin. I'm technically legal. I'm doing textiles. I'm doing foods, cosmetics. How is that sin? Just by that notion, prospects went away. But that was then and this is now. Today, the institutional investor community is very well aware of the hemp economy. They have their lens firmly on it. They are just waiting for, essentially we are at that point where the hockey stick curve is going to start showing growth. And that is where everyone is waiting to pounce on that opportunity. It's about timing now, I would say.
Yeah. No, I think this is just a bomb waiting to explode here.
It is.
This market is going to explode. And this is the future, the way I look at it.
Exactly. See, look, when you look at it, for example, let's take something like pain as a concept, chronic pain. India has almost 300 to 400 million people who are in pain constantly and commonly. In US, how did they tackle that? They give them opioids. And now what you've seen, the opioid crisis has just ravaged parts of the thing. Ironically, India is one of the largest producers of opioids in the world, but is one of the least consumers of opioids because people don't believe in it. So, for example, we had an oncologist call us up for one of our pain management products for a breast cancer patient, I believe it was. She says, look, Jahan, to get this much of morphine, I have to fill 47 pieces of paperwork. I have to then go to the central government. I have to wait to find out if they have stock of it because only central government can sell it. By that time, my patient's pain and cancer has progressed. This is the one thing that can help me solve this here and now. So when you are able to solve a problem immediately with something like hemp or cannabis, like how we target pain, stress, sleep, anxiety, people notice a difference not in 6 months, like how you would think in Ayurveda. Just because Ayurveda is the vehicle doesn't mean it's the entire genesis of what we're doing. You're seeing a difference in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour. That leaves a very strong impression on you that you take back with you. And that really helps build out the concept of the fact that do Indians need to live in pain? Do Indians still need to have sleep issues when the answer is in our own backyard? If you use it right, under the right supervision. This could be a success in ways other medicines, other products, other solutions may not have ever been. So solving that unique anomaly that people face in their day-to-day life is where we're seeing hemp and cannabis actually make a big difference.
Yeah. Cool. I think that brings us to the end of today's podcast, Jahan. It has been a lovely time having a conversation with you about this amazing and a magical substance that we call hemp. And you people have been front runners in innovating or rather throwing limelight on this product and this industry. And I hope to have a follow-up podcast with you as well.
Definitely.
In which we get to hear some great news. Any parting thoughts around for people who are starting up now in the early stages of the journey? What is your advice to them?
Let's face reality. You are in the best of times and the worst of times, ironically, at the same time. Make the most of it. whatever you're going to do, make the most of it. Enjoy the ride. Failure at this point or success at this point is not going to be defined by how much funding you got, or for example, what type of vanity metrics you'd hit, how many PR articles you got. It will matter by what difference you're going to make in someone's life. If you can make a difference in the life of one person, it's going to lead to 5. The key is building systems to ensure that ride from 1 to 100 continues to remain bulletproof. So that is the entire thing. That essentially, when you're building your strategic moats and sort of your guardrails, it's important to start early. Even if it takes time, even if it takes discipline and effort, do it, because then when the entire world, pardon my language, goes to hell, you are the one person standing safe. And we're essentially in a very, I'm sure you guys would also see this, we're in a crucial moment where funding winter is just getting bleaker and bleaker. The key mantra needs to be right now, survive. When you survive, only when you survive today can you thrive tomorrow. And that is how you need to think about things. Rather than being a unicorn, be a camel. That is most important.
Yeah, or a cockroach.
Or a cockroach, exactly.
But yeah, how's your experience, Jahan, of this podcast?
Fantastic. Amazing. I think the line of questioning, how you guys are thinking about it, the approach you're looking to put in the mind of the viewer is extremely important, because that helps build something. Even 2 people take it away and go back and say, Mummy, Papa, आपको पता है ये भी हो सकता है. Or even if one entrepreneur is motivated to say, चलो यार मैं भी try करता हूँ. That is a win.
Yeah.
जो पैसा बनता है वो that is अलग सा journey. But the real victories are these sort of the core memories you build.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jahan.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you.